I posted a review of Dune Part 2, and I did not really like it. If you go and look at that video, I am getting, as the kids say, cooked in the comment section. Like to dislike ratio, absolutely abysmal. Now, me personally, I'm okay with that. I can take criticism on the chin like a champ. However, I do have to do some damage control here to save my non-existent career here on YouTube, so I am going to appease the mob and speak positively about Dune Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. The one thing you definitely can't take away from the movie, it looks pretty. Look at that sand, I'm like, gosh darn it, did they actually go out in the desert to film this? The only reason I know that there's CGI in the movie is because I know for a fact that those big worms don't exist. You're not seeing any big worms coming out of the ground. You're not seeing them come out of the ground going like, "Bah, I'm a big worm, bah, I'm gonna eat you, bah, Tim Cham is riding me, bah." And then that gets me thinking. You look at the budget of Dune Part 2, and it's only $190 million. You look at the budget of Dune Part 1, only $165 million. And then you contrast that with other movies like The Flash, The Flashity Flash, which has a budget of 200 to 220. And you can look at the absolute gall of Fast X that has a budget of $340 million? What? And then I have to ask myself, why did these movies cost so much more money and look poo-poo caca, and Dune 2 cost so much less money and look infinitely better? Well, I'll tell you what I don't think the reason is. I don't think that, like, the VFX workers that worked on Dune are just infinitely more talented than the VFX workers that worked on those other big budget movies. I mean, listen, I don't have any insider knowledge or anything like that, but generally speaking, I feel like VFX professionals are going to be pretty talented and pretty competent at their jobs, and especially when you look at all of the very publicly reported on issues that a lot of these movies have, it's just probably not their fault. Because where I think that these VFX issues ultimately come from is just bad planning in the pre-production phase of your movies. You know, you would think that the way movies should be made is that, you know, you get a screenwriter to write a script. The executives at the studio, they read the script. They either say, hey, this is really good, let's make the movie. Or they say, no, this is bad, go back and rewrite it. Or you're fired, we're going to get another screenwriter. I mean, that seems like the way that you should just make movies. Well, technically not a movie, but allow me to progress anyways. She-Hulk. Variety reported that the executives, I guess, just didn't read the script. And when they were watching the footage of the season, originally, She-Hulk's origin story was told in episode 8. When the executives at Marvel got around to watching cuts of the show, they decided, this origin story that originally, I guess, was in episode 8, yeah, that should actually be in the first episode. And so because of that change, the VFX artists had to, like, rush together to fix it. And it's just like, did you not read the scripts, executives at Marvel? Did you not realize that that's probably gonna be an issue? This isn't something that you guys caught ahead of time? Like, during the production process? When I look at a lot of MCU projects and I look at the half-baked VFX and whatnot, I think it probably just comes to too many cooks in the kitchen, casually in the middle of production on these movies and TV shows going like, I think it should be something else. I think this scene should change. Do this instead. And so the VFX artists are like, we can do it, but it's not going to look good by the time the movie releases. And the executives are just like, whatever. Well, I want a big dragon in here. Don't worry about it. These suckers don't care. They're going to buy tickets anyways. And yeah, well, the chickens are coming home to roost, or however that saying goes. The article also talks about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania being pushed up because Marvel just needed it to premiere on that date. And in doing that, the post-production pipeline was pushed up by 4.5 months ahead of schedule. So the VFX artists just had to scramble together and cook up whatever they could. And so, yeah, it's not surprising to me at all that a bunch of these MCU projects as of late just don't look good. Let's take a look at Fast X, for example. That's a movie who switched directors in the middle of production. I mean, just with that fact alone, I feel like there is no doubt that there were scenes that were reshot, that there were decisions that were made basically on the fly in order to keep production going. You can probably take it to the bank that the final cut of that movie is not something that was brainstormed and planned meticulously by the creatives behind the scenes. And that's ultimately why I think that movies like Dune Part 2 end up looking as good as they do. You got Denis Villeneuve being given free reign to actually be a director, actually to, in the pre-production process, plan out what his movie is going to be. The studio is probably not going to fuck with his creative process as much. He's able to properly pre-plan what his movie is going to be, how he's going to shoot it, where he's going to shoot it. He's able to scout out locations, work with his director of photography, Greg Fraser, to see how exactly we're going to set up these shots and whatnot. How can we film this in a way that the VFX team is able to properly apply the VFX in the situation? How can we make their job as easy as possible? You know, one of the big punching bags in Hollywood at the moment is the volume. And that's because we've seen it used poorly a bunch of times. I mean, if you want to look at like the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and you look at Ewan McGregor like running away from Darth Vader and he's like running to the edge of the volume and then he runs back to the other side of the volume and it looks terrible. I will admit it. But the thing is that the volume is not the problem. You know what's a movie that uses the volume a lot? The Batman. You would have had no idea that these shots that I'm showing you right now was made on the volume. You know, the director talks about how, you know, they plan for the lighting that comes off of the screens to actually be the lighting that are on the actors to make it look as naturalistic as possible and stuff like that. And it really does feel like stuff that Thor Love and Thunder just doesn't really seem to care that much about. You know, I remember I really started to think about this topic when I watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I just remember thinking, how does this movie look this good when just a few months ago I had to endure Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania? Like, how does this work? And as I read more about the VFX situation at Marvel, I realized that it probably is as simple as James Gunn had autonomy over his movie. He probably wrote a really good script that the executives didn't really have to make notes on. Because of that, he was probably able to work a lot better with the VFX artists, giving them clear instructions throughout the entire production pipeline. You know, James Gunn probably didn't run into the VFX house and be like, hey, by the way, I know that the movie's coming out in a couple months, but we're changing the third act completely. We're no longer fighting on a lava planet. We're actually going to fight now on a water planet. So we're just going to change all of that. Okay, you guys got it? Cool. You know, he's a guy that obviously works in the industry and he knows about movies that don't have their third acts written and that they're written during the production of the movie itself. And as you probably know, James Gunn is starting his DCU and he said something that shouldn't be notable, right? This should just be a thing that happens regularly in the industry. But he said that people have become beholden to release dates, to getting movies made no matter what. I'm a writer at my heart, and we're not going to be making movies before the screenplay is finished. Wow, what an insane, innovative idea. You write the script? Then you plan how you're going to shoot your movie? And then you execute on that plan? Why did nobody think of this before? That one quote gives me so much more hope in the DCU and the prospects of what James Gunn is able to do. Now, who knows? Maybe James Gunn gets in there and he finds out, oh shit, this is actually kind of untenable at the end of the day when making a cinematic universe. I understand why Kevin Feige does things the way that he does, but hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully he is just able to go, you know what? This script isn't coming together yet. We're going to push the release date. You know, we're not going to Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania it, where it's like, we have to have a movie on this date on July 20th, because if we don't, then our quarterly earnings are going to be too low, so we're moving up Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, even though it's going to look like shit. But anyways, we kind of have to just wait and see how that goes. But at the end of the day, I think that I've been more or less figured out the industry. I'm sure it's not any more complex than I've laid it out to be, but to be serious for a second, I do feel like that has to be at least 70% of the battle. I mean, I just, again, based on everything that I've seen and read, it is the idea that seemingly so many of these productions just don't have competent directors and leaders in charge with strong creative visions, and you know, these projects are just being worked on because they have to be worked on, and nobody has a clear plan or direction for what they're doing. So listen, at the end of the day, I'm glad that movies like The Marvels and shows like She-Hulk are flopping or being critically panned, and we're seeing movies like Dune Part 2 and The Batman being universally praised, so that Hollywood is forced to be able to look at what we all actually want, and at the end of the day, give us quality products. So there we go. I glazed Dune Part 2, shat all over Marvel. Please validate me, the YouTube comment section. Bye.